You have crawl. We truly believe here at 6-8 Sports, crawl, walk, run, and we add sprint, right? Crawling, get the fundamentals. I see it all the time. They just don't have the base fundamentals to improve. Walk, right? Now we're pushing them. Now we're fine-tuning things. Run, now we're answering the question why. Why are I doing these stupid over-the-hip drills that we all don't like to do? And then sprinting is putting them in game-like situations so it becomes natural.
Yeah, and I think the vision, right, is so important. And we're going to kind of run through this. We're going to run through a practice plan and philosophies. And just because there's a good amount of people in here, if you guys have questions, type them on the side, if you don't mind, and we'll try to get to those at the end. But we really want you guys to think about what is your vision as a team, right? Like Tony was talking about. And just to give an example, I think about my 2012 team at the Olympic Games. We were all about 5-on-6 in defense. It was like this toughness. That was our identity, right? In the water and out of the water, to be honest. And at the Olympic Games, in the final game, the other team, Spain, ended up not making a 6-on-5 goal, which showed at the end of the day, like our vision showed. Same in 2016, we were focused on movement, sharing the ball. And at the games, we ended up scoring on average about 2 to 3 goals off movement. So think about what you want to be at the end, and then we can kind of work our way backward. I relate it to other sports, and I know Tony has a really good one as well. Like I think of the Warriors. Their identity is sharing the ball movement. I'm from the Bay Area, so I refer to them, right? But every team, it's so important at the club level, but we're talking with advanced. So whether it's college or high school, club, what's that vision? What do you want to look like at the end of the day?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting seeing 2 gold medalist teams with 2 different identities, right? And you look at us in 2008, which was the last medal we've had in a while, and our identity was defense with a focus on 5-on-6. And I believe that like an identity helps athletes own their own core principles. It really does, because I remember every time that there was someone got ejected on our team, we all kind of looked at each other like, this is what we're known for, right? People came in, yeah, we counted a lot, but this is what we were known. This was our identity. And in 2008, I truly believe that helped us achieve that silver medal. And going back to another sport, I grew up, my grandfather played in Alabama, and I grew up a Bear Bryant guy. If you think Alabama back there, they ran the ball. That's it. That was all they were going to do. And Maggie said the Warriors, they passed the ball. But you see all these teams, successful teams around the world with an identity. Yet in water polo, you don't see it that much. You're just, what are we doing? And that identity has to change. If you're a smaller team like Japan, guess what? You can't have the identity of a big center-based offense. So I think it's your job as a coach to create this vision. And from there, you create the building blocks to let it happen, like Maggie said.
Sorry. So we're going to dive into an example. Tony, I think I'm just going to pull up that 5-on-6 and we'll kind of start with that. Like Tony mentioned, to us, the foundation is so important. And I want to get that across as much as possible. It doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world. The fundamentals, that foundation is what allows you to keep growing. It doesn't matter, right, what age group. Continually doing those fundamentals is so important. The difference is, at the advanced level, you're now doing those drills with an imagination. And I want that to kind of really get across for when you guys are working with your athletes is, now you guys, these athletes are advanced, they're a bit more experienced. When they're doing drills, can they picture a game situation? And that's going to help with the mental side as well, which we got a lot of questions about, is when you're doing, like Tony mentioned, a silly over your hips drill. How can you teach your athletes when they're doing an over their hips drill? Can they put themselves in a game situation? Can they have more imagination? Can they, use their creativity in the simple foundation drills? Because that's going to translate to the end, right? When they're in a game, they've already gone through that because of repetition, and that imagination of the game is going to translate. So if we were to look at the 5-on-6 examples, we decided to just pick, a practice plan of, defense, for example. We can look at some 5-on-6 drills. First with crawl, we're doing laps. Then with walk, I think if you're not doing 5-on-6, passing for 20, 30 minutes, this teaches technique so well, right? But on the defensive end, if we're doing a 5-on-6 drill, the walk, this is a one-on-one coaching opportunity. to work with your athletes. And then Tony, if you want to do run and sprint, and I'll show a video at the end.
Yeah, so just like Maggie said, right, I think practices that everything is building to the end is the ideal practices, right? You start off obviously with the warm-up. You can even start with the dry land. You're going over your hips. Then you're blocking, which Maggie's going to show in this video. Then you come to the run, right? The why. And that I can't emphasize as more of the importance of why. Why are we doing these drills? And I get it. I hated those drills over the hips, but I started to appreciate them because I knew when we had to go and do a triangle drill, for example, in 5-on-6, I'm sitting there diving. And I'm like, this is a drill we're doing, and I'm falling, and I'm getting scored on by Chris Oding when I was young, or Wygo, or Brett Ornsby, or whoever it was. And it's like, okay, I need to improve that angle of my game. And that comes out the competitiveness, and you as a coach can see if they're actually were doing it correctly in the crawl walk stage, if they're doing it there. And then as far as the sprint category, that's when you get them into, now they're tired, now there's pressure, right? So for example, we used to do 10 6-on-5s counter on the last one. I can't tell you how many times I see a 6-on-5 practice and it looks great. They're scoring 50-60%. But are you scoring 50-60% because your offense is moving wonderfully? Or are you scoring because one or two players are having an on day? Well, those one or two players in a game, when they're being pressed and there's pressure on the line, they don't score. Well, you don't have a 5-on-6 or a 6-on-5. So that's the idea, is give them the building blocks, put them in a competition mode, and then push them, pressure situations. Hey, every time you miss, you got to sprint, right? The losing team has to sprint 100 all out. Now they're going to have a little pressure on them, and now you're going to see how they react in a pressure situation.
Yeah, so we, like we showed on that slide, we have a ton of drills on the app to kind of go through, and we can talk about more specifics at the end. But Tony and I wanted to share this one video of this kind of in the walk-run phase of just teaching simple technique while also trying to understand the why before you get in front of a cage. So hopefully you guys can see this. I hate hearing my voice on audio, so I apologize to all of you. But this is a 5-on-6 example you could do at the beginning of a practice. All right, so once again, we're at X3. This is an X3 series focusing on 5-on-6. Notice that when I'm doing these drills, my body is open. I rarely close, because when I close, I have to use that much more energy and that much more time to fully open my body to get my blocking position. So now 6 is pocket, and they're a huge threat, so we want to move out at them. So similar to a normal shot block, our legs are high on the surface, we're guarding the 3-post, our eyes are watching the ball, and we're going to try to cover as much space as possible, and then I'm going to move towards my shooter and recover. On my recover, I'm going to have to probably swim or take a stroke because I moved a bit farther. So here, I want to cover my quick shot. 6 pocket is a good shooter, so I'm going to move at them, keeping my block. I'm going to lunge and hit, and then I'm going to probably swim open. Okay, so I'll move back a little bit so you can see a bit more. Notice when I recover to the wall, I want you to watch my feet quickly wipe the surface to get into a good position. So I'm here on the 3-post. Ball goes to 6 pocket. It's a left-hander this time. I'm moving. I hit. And I'm back. Okay, one more time. Watch my end feet. Watch my eyes. And notice how explosive I am to recover to the post. So left-hander again at 6 pocket. I want to move out of them. They're a good shooter. Hit. Heavy. And I'm ready for another repetition. So that's something that is in such a small space, but that's something you could do for 20 minutes at X3, at X1, X4, X5, right? Even just in that crawl walk. And then from there, you take it to those stations, the run sprint part of it. So another example, and we'll run through this quickly as well, is just drive defense. And both of these are really important to Tony and I, the 5-on-6 and drive defense, which is why we wanted to share with you today. And so similarly, if you're working on a drive defense day, think of it in that same crawl walk, right? Do the dry land, get your body warm. We're doing laps. Maybe you're in place. You're teaching kids about imagination. Like if they're in one area of the pool or they're doing laps, can you use the black swim lines on the bottom to teach them about space and where they are in the pool, right? And then we go into the walk, teaching them technique. And this is a space where you can use stations. We think that is so important. Not only can you use stations to, as a coach, get more one-on-one time and give more feedback to the athletes, but you can even use it for position specific. So if they play one side of the pool versus the other, right, can we put athletes in specific places so that they can work on this walk part where you're really focusing on the technique. And stations also allow you to have that like competition mindset. So on a drive defense, maybe this is one-on-one or just doing those drills repetitively to kind of get that technique muscle memory, right? Using repetition, using imagination, and then we get into the next phase of a practice.
Yeah. And so just like Maggie said, now we're ready to get some kind of competition going. And usually what we used to do is I would guard the left-handed players on their side and they try to drive and I would try to move correctly and vice versa when they tried to guard me on the other side. But I can remember one time that Dayon, he was trying to teach us a new style of defense, right? With this whole butt up, and it was so hard. And maybe just because I was 34 years old, like hard to teach a new dog new tricks, but it was just really hard. And I kept doing it. But this was the most important. This run phase was the most important part for me because I didn't end up doing it the way he did, but I found this happy medium, which really made me a better defender when I was guarding these bigger left-handers. So that run phase is huge. And then you move in to the sprint phase, right? Now it is, okay, hey, we're going to run a 5 front court offenses controlled in a press, and we are focusing on the drive. And I'm going to kick out a little more if it's a 6-on-5 day as well. But that, to us, that's so important. And we see when you tie together at the end all the scrimmaging and playing. For us, scrimmaging really doesn't exist unless you are controlling it, right? It is 5 front courts doing this. It is 5 6-on-5s, and there's a consequence. And that's what we believe that sprint section is.
Yes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, that's to us. I think we talk about this crawl, walk, run, sprint, and I think we can move that into every category of Maggie will talk a little bit about maybe in a season, but I'm talking about even conditioning, right? The importance of conditioning. Ratko used to swim us 10,000 meters a day, right? Now, when I talked to him later on, obviously not during, but when I talked to him later on, he's like, I didn't expect you to be faster, quicker. It was all about you being mentally tough. And I look back to our win in 2008 or our silver medal, and I truly believe he made us the mentally toughest team in the world. I mean, when you are grinding day after day after day, that's the conditioning. Now, we don't really believe so much in that kind of conditioning, but obviously there's those bigger yards at the beginning, there's your sprints at the end. But I think what people are missing is how much conditioning you can do in a practice with the ball. I mean, Dante Dedamonte, when I was at Stanford for that year, we never even swam. I mean, all we did was counterattacks, right? But again, that was our identity. Stanford was counter only. And so we could just sprint counter over and over and over again. And let me tell you, it was tough, right? Animal drill, when we used to just get crushed by a defender and have to take 3 shots and sprint to the other side and do it again. And the last thing I'll say, I think so important is if you do want to get that playing wise, 4-on-4. You guys, and we go through like possessions. How many times does every single person touch the ball in a game? Usually 2 or 3 people control most. So that means other people in the game are not getting enough ball work. They're not comfortable with the ball. So how do we raise that bar for them? Well, 4-on-4. You can't hide in 4-on-4. You can't sit on the wing, drive across. You have to control the ball. And this is a great way to get all of your athletes on the same page.
Right. Just like that isolation, like Tony was talking about with triangles of 5-on-6, or, if you're doing drive defense, isolate one side so that there's 4-on-4, you're isolated, so creating those isolated situations for your athletes. So for us, we think that if you guys are approaching a season or a tournament, you can use this crawl, walk, run, sprint, outline as well. So if you're in a season, let's just say you're getting ready for a tournament, the beginning of the season is that crawl, walk. You're using fundamentals. You're kind of creating that foundation. So later on, there's those building blocks. Those might be the first few weeks of season. You can apply that to swimming and lifting as well. So the beginning of the season in that crawl walk, you're creating that endurance, that foundation of swimming. So maybe you're swimming a bit longer, right? You're lifting, you're creating the foundation of your muscles. but it's more about the building of endurance and kind of getting the skills correct. Then as we go into the run sprint of our season, now we're doing, if you're relating it to swimming, we're literally sprinting more, right? We might be doing less yardage, but we're going faster. This is the explosive time. It's exactly what it sounds, run sprint. This applies to your lifting outside of the water or dry land. It's more explosive. And this applies to your skills. So right in the beginning of the season, you're really honing in on the technique. And then towards the end in that run sprint, we're spending more time in that tactical strategy and competition phase, right? And this can apply, we got a lot of questions about, building a team. And I think this is really important to think of as well. When you're in the beginning, that crawl walk phase, this is where you're building the team. So you're not focused on just the strong potential athletes. Can you pair strong and weaker athletes together to build up the team as a whole? This is also going to help you guys see leaders. When you're doing stations, maybe pair a stronger experienced leader or athlete with younger players and see if they can develop those leadership skills. And as a coach, you'll notice that, right? You're going to notice, are they helping them or are they blaming them? And this is a good time for you guys as coaches to be seeing that and kind of test around that with athletes. Then in the run sprint phase, you're pairing skill level more with one another. On 6-on-5, you're doing that 4-on-4 competition with similar skill levels. So they're able to raise their overall, the team overall and who they're going to be playing with. So these are just things that you guys can kind of start thinking about and how Tony and I really look at it. And two, we're the advanced group. So maybe you're sending them home with homework or video, making them think about this why a bit more, which I think Tony's going to explain.
Yeah, and going back to what Maggie said, I always believed, look, Maggie and I had to swim a lot because we played 4 quarters nonstop, but I never understood why Ryan Bailey, a enormous center who played 2 quarters, had to do the same, right? I think everyone can be different. Stations is a great way to separate, like Maggie said, with leadership, but also separate, hey, these guys are weak here, or these guys need to work more here. That's what they should be doing. My last Olympics, they said I needed legs, so I ended up with the centers more. We also talked about subbing, like, how to create that perfect subbing line and that perfect group. Well, these are also ways you start to create bonds between leaders and some of the weaker players, or you take out your best player and everything falls apart. Well, which players are showing that they play well with each other so that when that one player's out, you can start seeing that it's not dropping off as much as you need. That's something we're really focused on the game desk, which Carl's going to explain later. And lastly, homework. I mean, I did this whole spring break thing, Maggie and I asked this question, right? And then I started asking a bunch of people and no one got it. And so I asked Maggie, am I crazy? Am I the only one that thought the same way? And then I didn't tell her, and she answered the same 2 that I did. So I'm just going to show you an example of homework. And I don't know how well you can see here, but basically what I asked is, this is the one player on a 6-on-5. Okay. The right-handed. So he gets a shot. This player's up, right? So he was behind, he takes a shot. What does your counterattack look like? To me, and I'll let you look at this a little, but to me, there's two options, right? There's 2 options. And the 6-on-5 isn't really an option. That's just, okay, it didn't work. Now we're going to set up our offense. So to me, I see 2 things. I see this player going down, this player going down. I see myself, who is always in this position because I'm in the lane, blocking, cutting off, and I see a 3-on-2. That's what I see. And then the second one I see is, because I've been in this situation where I wasn't in the lane, don't tell coach, and all of a sudden this player comes, well, now we have a 4-on-3. Those are the only 2 things that came to my mind. And it's funny, like you think and you assume that your players might know those little things, but they don't. And in our sport, you just have to know things. If the ball's at 1 and you're X3, where should you be? You should be able to answer that immediately. So don't be afraid to give homework, give assignments, and let them answer, because you'll see that they're not as smart as they look.
Yeah, and before we just answer some questions with the last 5 minutes, that is so important to let them think about it. I think so often we just want to tell them what it is. And I love how Tony approached this with his kids. He gave them a piece of paper, which all of us can do. And I did this growing up with my coach, Marino Toole. Give you a piece of paper with literally draw a cage and ask you to just draw out situations. What happens if one shoots in a press? What happens if this happens on 5-on-6? And have them just draw it out, right? And this is going to allow you guys as well to kind of see what's going on in their minds, because, you know, water polo is a team sport. Maybe they actually saw something that as a coach you never thought of, or maybe you're like, wow, the understanding of this is so lost that I need to spend an entire practice just focusing on this specific counterattack, right? So it kind of helps you create what you might do in that run phase of tactics, right? Is giving that homework and seeing what they might be doing. And it's a fun way too. One of the questions, and we're going to kind of get into questions here a little bit, but one of the questions that someone asked was how to make fundamentals more fun and enjoyable. And, you know, this is definitely hard because we're talking about repetition, right? And so that can get a bit tough, but I think adding in that imagination and trying to inspire your athletes to put them in a game situation, that's going to take a boring drill, a boring lap into a mental, you know, competition almost. And I think that's so important. And that applies as well to your season. We can't be intense at all times. It's so important to have that fun culture of, I love this sport. You know, it's a game. Remember that. That's like something my dad always said, just go out there and fly, like enjoy it. And I think that's something to remind your athletes as well, is be intense, you know, build, and then have those moments where maybe you do some fun game. Or maybe you have a break where it's like just a team bonding activity away from the pool. And that's going to kind of refresh their minds and also just remind the athletes this is a game, right? And same with fundamentals, remind them it's a game and maybe make it a game. We do that at our camps all the time. It's like, okay, we need to do a lot of sprints, but we're going to make it a game now, right? Like get them in that competition phase and get that fire going.
Just on one of the like 5-on-6 drills that I used to do and that I do around when I do some of these camps is I'll have them hit, and when they hit and have to recover, they have to yell, nope, right? And it just gets them all excited, and they're competing with each other at the same time they're doing that drill. So fundamentals is hard. But again, why are we doing this? Why is this going to make you better? And then going to another question here by Dylan about, you know, how do you get players who are coaching to buy into the vision and to create the collective goal? You're right. And I used to tell our teammates, because there's always going to be some people, the coach, I think this is a better offer. I think this. And I used to tell everyone, I said, guys, there is no perfect 5-on-6. There is no perfect defense. Honestly, there isn't. It's if everyone is on the same page, it's great. And I can make up the worst defense out there. Everyone don't press anything, but if everyone's doing it, it's going to be pretty good. And that's the bottom line. I mean, if you can just instill that in them and say, look, I'll take a team that is all on the same page, and you decide what you want to do, and they're going to be all on different pages. I guarantee I'm going to win. I guarantee it. You know, and you can maybe use an example from some teams in other sports to have him understand that. But I think that's the biggest thing. Give him the vision. Like, there is no right or wrong as long as we're all together. That's the biggest picture.
Yeah, that's so important. You know, you always think about championship teams, and it's the best team that won, you know, and just having, I think as a coach, something that's really important, we mentioned this in the Q&A, is letting them know that you're a part of the team as well. You know, don't push yourself in there, but make sure you're being accountable as well. You know, that's something I always really, really respected about the coaches I've had is, you know, they're there early, they're there last, you know, like they're putting in all this effort. They feel with us, like if we lost or we played well, you know, you celebrate the successes with the team. Although as a coach, you have to always remind them how they can improve, right? But celebrate that success. Or if you fail, like feel it with them, or on a one-on-one level. As a coach, I think that's so important is, can you create that relationship one-on-one so that you know how to motivate them, right? You know what's fun for them. And that's going to be different for every player. And that's so important, especially on the advanced level. Is Tony and I talked about this the other day. You can't, you know, and my coach Adam says this, you can't treat everyone the same because everybody is different, but you can create a common mission, an equal mission that everybody can now have as the same. So maybe the way they go there, maybe the way they treat it is a bit different, but that mission is the same and you're right there with them, which is really cool.
Cool. I think we are out of here in the next question. So
yeah, in the next
make
minute.
sure you guys ask questions in our breakout sessions. Peace.
Thank you, everybody. And check out the app too. We have all those videos on there. So we're going to be happy to help to help to show drills at the end of this as well if you need more drills and skill specifics.
Okay.
All right. See you there.